afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. For this month's Bird Notes program, we're going to talk about keeping our birds fed during the winter months. Joining us from the Audubon Center in Huntington is bird expert and conservation biologist Mark LaBarr. Mark, thank you so much for being with us again.
Great to see you again, Fran. Always a pleasure.
So I guess it's time, we're getting close to winter bird feeding time, which is very exciting. So remind us again, are there bird feeders we should then move out?
Yeah, it is coming up. We're kind of in a transition zone. Time to take down those summer hummingbird feeders if you have them up. Our hummingbird that we see here in the summer, the ruby-throated hummingbird, has moved south. And, so we won't see these little delightful birds that are around. But, it's interesting for those that may keep their hummingbird feeders up a little bit longer. There is another hummingbird that feeds us or visits us every once in a while here in Vermont, and that's the rufous hummingbird. I haven't heard, you can see it kind of looks just like the, ruby throat, but it's got that brownish belly there. And they're a migrant that comes down through Vermont every once in a while. So for those of you that maybe have forgotten to take your hummingbird feeders down, you never know what may show up.
That's very exciting. I always tell people there's just one kind of hummingbird here, but that's not true. There's
Yep,
the rufous.
we do occasionally get another one during migration.
Okay, so we'll take down those feeders, and what are the feeders that we should get ready to put out?
So, one thing here, as I said, we're in a transition time, and many people are anxious to get their winter bird feeders up, but we still have the presence of avian flu here in the state. And so, I want to caution everybody to wait until December 1 or until the snow flies, both for avian flu and for bears. Just another month and you can start hanging those feeders. And this is, your classic feeder that we often see with the classic food in it. This is our tube feeder. We've got some house finches hanging out on it, and of course, black oil sunflower seed in the tube. Tube feeders are great if you're just starting. Folks at Bird Feed know these are a regular thing. If they're clear, you can see through, you can see where your seeds are. The perches don't necessarily allow some of the bigger gobbling species like blue jays to get on there, and they're easy to clean. So, if you're just getting started out or if you're looking to add one, tube feeders, and they come in all different sizes, are a great feeder to put out.
And cleaning is important.
It is. This is a good time to get out those old feeders and, a solution of 1 part bleach to 4 parts water, clean them good, and then they should be cleaned regularly throughout the bird feeding season.
Okay, so what other kinds of feeders do you recommend?
Well, the platform feeder or the classic old feeder that allows all birds to perch on, including some of the birds that like to gobble food down. Here's a blue jay on one of those. They have perches that, allow access for blue jays and other larger birds as well as the younger birds. Sometimes they can be made of wood, a little bit more difficult to clean. But a great, feeder to have as part of your array if you're putting up many. And of course, one of the birds that come in and use those feeders are the cardinals, always a bright thing to see on a snowy day. And I threw this one of the female cardinal in here because the male gets a lot of credit sometimes for all that bright red plumage, but the female is equally sharp in her more muted colors.
Yeah, I think the females are gorgeous. I love that muted color. And
Yeah.
I sometimes see grosbeaks come to those kinds of feeders. There are wonderful birds that come
Yeah,
to
and
those.
the grosbeaks are around this year because there's a good ash crop, ash seed crop. And so, you're lucky to get those at your feeder. Not everybody does.
So what about suet feeders?
So it's another, if you're looking to attract a broad array of birds and you want to have a bunch of different species. A suet feeder, they often come in square boxes. This is kind of a round one that has seed mixed in it as well. Are great for a number of different species. Our chickadees are probably our most common bird that we see at feeders. Folks that see at feeders, the black-capped chickadee will come in and feed on. This feeder looks like it's got a mixture of seed and suet. Suet feeders come in all sizes. Here's a big one with a lot of seeds in it. A lot of suet feeders also have just more suet in them. They can be a little messy to play around with, but they bring in a whole nother group of birds that bird watchers like to see.
Right. We have one that we put in a little cage. Those little square
Yes.
ones that are
Yep.
seem to
They're
work really well.
they're probably the most common. Yes.
Yeah. So what other birds might we see at a suet feeder?
So, I could name a number of different birds which come to feeders. Like you said, you had your grosbeaks, which is good, but suet feeders, you got to include the nuthatches. The white-breasted nuthatch here, the upside down bird. It's often seen feeding upside down as it either scurries on the tree or at your suet feeder. And if you live in a place that has more coniferous, woods around you, you might be lucky enough to have the red-breasted nuthatch. A little bit of a smaller bird, has that nice red breast, but has the same kind of behavior pattern that the white-breasted nuthatch has. Again, great birds to see come into your suets, and they'll feed on seed as well.
Right. And you showed a woodpecker, but there are all so many different types of woodpeckers. It's fun to figure out who's coming to the suet feeder.
Yeah, in Vermont now we have our classics, the downy woodpecker and the hairy woodpecker. And then, red-breasted woodpeckers are showing up even more and more over time, and they're a great bird, especially in the Champlain Valley and the Connecticut River Valley, but all over Vermont. Our other flickers are our other woodpeckers, the flicker heads south, so does the yellow-bellied sapsucker. And you may even get lucky and see a pileated woodpecker show up on those suet feeders.
Oh yeah, or at least in the woods. We
Yes.
get them coming and going every spring and fall. I love them. I've even
Yeah.
heard one recently.
Yeah.
So what kind of feeder brings in the goldfinches? Because I love those just mobs of goldfinches that hang out at our place.
Yeah, so goldfinches and things like pine siskins, birds that have really narrow bills, and tend to prefer a different food type, which is thistle, a very small seed. So you have to have a feeder that has a very small hole on it. You can see this goldfinch picking at thistle seed that's inside of that feeder. Thistle seed, you should make sure you get new seed every year because it does go bad. Sometimes you put out old seed and the goldfinches and siskins won't touch it. But that small slot there allows the goldfinches to access the seed without the seed falling all over your lawn or deck. And it's expensive seed too. So make sure you get one of those specifically for goldfinches. And here at the Audubon, we get pine siskins usually in late winter, early spring. They'll show up.
Yeah, I was noting that cup. We don't have that. That's really very smart to look for on a thistle feeder.
Yeah, it catches, some of those tube feeders also have a bottom that you can buy that you can attach that it collects all of the seed that tends to fall out. And, seed can be expensive. So, worth the investment.
And of course, all these feeders bring in the squirrels.
Yeah. And, I have one picture here. I could probably do an entire show on the variety of different squirrel-proof feeders. Here you got a tube feeder. You got a cage around it. There's some feeders that will throw the squirrel off. There's all sorts of things out there. Squirrels are tough. And even a feeder like this, they can often get through those holes, especially red squirrels. And so for those folks that do bird feeding, it's an ongoing battle. Oftentimes, some of the best things to do is put your feeders, away from the house on its own pole, so that the squirrels can't get up it, maybe with a baffle on the bottom to keep the squirrels up. But they're crafty little creatures. So
Sometimes watching their aerobatics or,
it
it's
can
just
be
as fun
quite.
as watching the birds, but you want to feed the birds.
You want to feed the birds, and there are feeders out there for squirrels that use corn and stuff like that. So if you're inclined to do that, you can set one of those up, and maybe the squirrels will just eat the cheaper stuff and not the expensive black oil seed, sunflower seed.
So I'd like for you to repeat about the avian flu and really not to start feeding the birds until December 1st or when the snow
When the
flies.
snow flies, that's what the state of Vermont is recommending. Avian flu is in wild bird populations. There's a concern primarily for poultry producers or people that have ducks or chickens. That seems to be the biggest concern, but we have to be, conscious of our smaller birds that come to feeders. So bears.
Mm.
I've seen pictures of downtown Rutland with bears ransacking feeders. So we follow the recommendations that the state puts out to hold off on putting out your feeders, December 1st or until the snow flies. Make sure those bears are tucked in and the chances for transmitting avian flu decline.
Okay, so if you have any bird related questions, you can pass it along to Mark at the address on your screen, or you can drop Mark an email. His address is mlabarr@audubon.org. You can send Mark your questions and pictures, and he'll try to find the answers for you on an upcoming edition of Bird Notes. Mark, thank you so much for joining us and getting us ready for birds for the winter.
It's that time, everybody. And thanks for having me, Fran.
You bet. And once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well and enjoy the birds.